Okay. Hello. Sorry for being. Oh, geez. I don't even know how that works. Hello. Sorry for being late. That's just how it works out. It's a Friday. I'm sure tomorrow and Saturday I'll be up and ready to go. And I'm. Oh, geez. Hold on a second. Messy room. All right. Here we go. I got my pencil case here to prop up my phone. There we are. All right. So I'll be reading again this weekend from the same book, The Greatest Storm, a romantic comedy about two lovers separated by an ocean. And by the way, I'm J.E. Krieger, author of The Books of 9 and 10 Penance. And that's book 2. And, well, before we get started, I thought I was digging around in the attic last night. Probably not the best place to put this, and I found my old drawing of Land of the Surreal Garden of the Midnight Frog, one of my favorite drawings here. So you can kind of see it. And that's one of my favorite pieces of art. I've recreated it dozens of times. So, there we go. Well, I'm sorry, Tashin Bees. I wish I would have started a little earlier. I always start at 10:30. So, so I'm 45 minutes late. Hey, so see me. Anyways, back to the tale of The Greatest Storm, the story of Allison White and Stephen Blackman. This chapter is called The One That Got Away, and it's certainly one of my favorite chapters in the book. So if you like to hear chapter readings, then you're in the right place. If you don't, then you are in the wrong place. But I'm reading from that book. The chapter, The One That Got Away. You'll have to check my channel. For the other chapters, they're all on a playlist, and so is the whole first book you can read on a playlist. All right, let's get started. Want to drink some coffee? Sorry, I'm late today. All right, this chapter is called The One That Got Away. All the while, Allison White sailed on, with guidance from those who truly know how lonely the sea is. The ocean danced melodramatically with moving colors. There was a soft yellow bouncing off the waves, enchanting the sea in greens and violets. As the sun slowly descended into the distance, the plainless voids of an empty ocean held a gloomy presence, though she sailed with a school of lonely begotten mermen with tales of their own to tell. With nothing to speak of the long journey ahead, Allison looked at each one of the mermen who once walked on dry land. She wondered about the lives they led before Isis had destroyed them and the tales they could tell of the sea. Then she noticed one of them was covered in scars, cut in deep across his entire body. It was as if he had a bout with an angry squid and lost. She had to know more of the fate of this one, who seemed to have the most tragic tale to tell out of all of them, and their forced life under the sea. So, with a hesitant voice, she asked, fearful of the reply, though by the look of him, it seemed like a question he wouldn't want to answer, as he was the only one who did not raise his voice once in anger to speak of his contempt for Isis and the sea's icy demeanor. Excuse me, Carl, what happened to that man with the scars on his face, the one who does not speak with words, but with anguish and tears frozen in his gaze? See if I can do the voice. He would tell you himself. But if you will look closely, he has a scar that runs deep across his neck. I would tell you the name he once had when he walked on land. But he's had that scar long before I met up with him. He is perhaps the bravest of all who helped push you along. His tale truly is a tragic one indeed, for he risked life and limb one day, quite literally, as you can see. All right, the great temptress of the sea, and I'm just not going to do the whole voice through the whole chapter. I don't have it in me this morning. The great temptress of the sea relies on her magic concorn, and it is the only thing she leaves unguarded. One day we were swimming close to shore, not that long ago, in search of it. It was our hope to find it before she sprung her trap and lured in another poor unsuspecting fool, looking for a mate. It had been so long since any of the men who push you along had seen that wretched face of hers. At first, when we saw her, we truly believed she was a myth. But it was her all right, and none of us can forget. I assure you of that. Her golden image of beauty is burned deeply within all of our hearts. She was in the middle of enticing this man out to sea when we swam up on her. I won't bore you with the details, but when opportunity presented itself, we swam out to greet her with cold vengeance, ready to plunge our three-pronged sticks deep within her icy heart. The man with the scars risked his life that day, for unlike the rest, he went after her precious concorn instead of her heart. It was a foolish mistake, but then again, maybe we were the fools for attempting to tame that heart of hers in the first place. Only this time with our lust for her blood and head spiked up high on our three-pronged sticks. While we were attempting the impossible, our friend with the scars was about to find out how foolish of an attempt he'd made. He swam close to shore as we distracted that evil sea urchin with long blonde hair. Just as the fool set foot in the ocean waters, our friend swam up and snatched the concorn right out of his hands, before he had a chance to tempt fate, swim with us for the rest of his days, and lose what we all hold dear to our hearts, our legs. He lost a limb that day, but gained her most prized possession. Though our friend suffered the wrath, at least the man who was tempted to walk into her trap got away. Once the concorn was in his grasp, and Azuzu was onto his game. Azuzu's the sea serpent. We fought the beast off as best we could, so our friend could get away. He got away all right, but Isis and her serpent were drawn to it like a magnet. She is relentless in her pursuit of things she does not need, but relentless doesn't even begin to describe what many of us who no longer swim by our side went through to keep her from obtaining her precious concorn, the magic concorn that turned them all into mermen. Hold on. Okay. There came a point when too many of our kind became nothing more than a forgotten tale of a sailor's dream at the bottom of the sea because of it. We are all that remain, all that no longer are no longer under her evil, lust-filled spell for that matter. We knew the seven of us alone couldn't protect her most prized possession and the potential lives that it could take if we held on to it any longer. If the seven of us fell, then there would be no one left to tell the tale and warn others who do not yet know of her charms and the misery it brings. So it was decided we needed to find a place to hide the concorn so she would hunt us no more, and the tale of our fates could live on. We searched the uncharted waters for many a lonely nights, seeking a place to hide what she so desperately needed to sustain her ill-begotten life. Then one day we came across an island shrouded in a strange mist, the very same island you speak of. We swam near shore and were greeted by an old man named Steve. We told him of our dilemma, and he said he could help. It must have been fate that introduced us that day, for when he said he could help, he meant it. The island was a blessing for us, but a curse for others. It was the only place we knew of in these waters that protects unsuspecting fools from being lured away by her deceivingly blue charms and ruby red lips. Though the men on the island do not remember a thing and search for a love they do not know exists, this is what holds the key to their survival. Her charms are useless against what they seek. One night, as Steve was collecting debris from a shipwreck, he heard her enchanting voice trying to lure men away. Isis knows this island well. For her, this place is the ultimate test of her skills as a temptress. But the curse these men were under proved to be stronger than her will, her softly spoken charms. You'll have to go back to chapter 2 or chapter 3 they're all under a spell on the island. They've all forgotten their own names. Anyways, he watched as the myth swam near shore and placed a spell over a crab. Then she placed the crab inside the conchorn and had this creature walk it into a cove backed up against the rock cliffs. Isis carefully surveyed the top of the cliffs, looking for an unsuspecting fool to come walking by, so she may lure him to his doom. She didn't have to wait long. This island is littered with foolish men who roam its lands night and day. She then cried out her usual taunt to trick them into a life without legs. There was no man on the island who would not stop and talk to her, but the result was always the same. The men on the island of lost souls, so to speak, would simply ask the same question they always ask. That is, if she knew where their love to be wait. She would tell them they wait in a cove not far on the beach, but unfortunately they'd either fall to their demise or walk through the field of forgetfulness. She tried many times to lure men away from that place, but all of her attempts were of no use, for the island's curse cannot be broken by a promise from someone whom did not know their own name. Our friend Steve was collecting debris strung along on the beach as usual for his survival, when a man he met a week prior must have lost his way and wandered off the beaten path. Steve ignored him and continued on with what he was doing. Then he saw that temptress's fin break free from the waves, so he hid behind some rocks and told his addle-brained friend with no name to do the same. He ignored Steve. Instead, he continued to look out at the sea, watching as the temptress made her deadly approach. The same as before, she told him of how her love for him was strong, and then asked if she'd found her one true love. After the usual test of her skills, Steve assumed his addle-brained friend would walk away, but he didn't. This was the first and only time he ever caught a glimpse of the power of her charms. The man did as she asked. He blew on the conchorn with great force and swam out to greet her. She then went on with her usual taunts and asked for the 3 items she asks of every man. Her smile grew big and wide. She must have been in high spirits that day for being able to, for once, in her ill-begotten life, lure a man away from that cursed place into the arms of her treacherous claws. Though Steve felt the island had lost a soul, at least one of them got away. The next day, however, right about the same time, the man he'd seen jump into the sea returned. Steve was intrigued. Something was different about him. So he went by the pile of rocks where he hid out the other day and got a closer look. His addle-brained friend returned with the sailor's look upon his face, something he didn't have before. He also carried with him a sack strapped around his left shoulder. Steve assumed that's where he kept the 3 items she asked for. Isis then showed up as usual in her tale of the woe she places upon others. Strangely, he ignored her charms, her angelic voice, and crawled up on shore, headed straight for the conchorn. Nothing, and I mean nothing, could deter him. He was willed by something else, a force more powerful than her voice. She asked him to reconsider her offer. She even did something unbelievable. She something even to this day I cannot believe she did. She made a compromise. She asked for only two more items to be brought to her, then one, and when that didn't work, she tried another form of persuasion. She offered to share. This was the only tale I've ever heard of her being willing to compromise. Hold on. To this day, Steve's story of the one who got away has me puzzled. Like maybe we have one viewer. I don't know if you're the same viewer that keeps tuning in, but I think I have one viewer who's been listening. Okay, continue on. I'm reading my book. It's a good chapter. The man with no name crawled up on shore, blew on the conchorn, and became a man, only he stood tall and proud. Isis was in a frenzy, flapping and filleting her fin against the ocean waves, with all her best charms laid out, but nothing worked. This was the closest she'd ever been in all her attempts to accomplish the impossible, and she had failed miserably. He ignored her ruby-red lips, her angelic smile, and that wretched voice that goes along with it. Instead, he asked the same question all men on the island ask, only this time the question was asked with something Steve had never heard one of the men utter. The man with no name asked with a name given to him and addressed with the name of the one he sought. Isis didn't know how to respond to the confidence that rung loud, clear in this man's boastful voice, but to at least ask for the items safely tucked away in his sack. Without hesitation, he pulled out 3 items that resembled nothing like what she asked for and gave it to her, as if they meant nothing to him. He claimed he didn't need anything in return for returning what was rightfully hers. He said all he needed was the love of his life, a woman with a name. I'm reading from my book, The Greatest Storm. It's a romantic comedy about 2 lovers separated by an ocean. But there's a chapter playlist on my channel you can check out, and I'm going chapter by chapter. So if you want to start from the beginning, you can. And the first book's on there too. Anyways, I'll continue on. She was heartbroken and in tears to know she had found the one man who couldn't be persuaded by her charms. So she gave no response. Then this man did the most unusual thing. Instead of walking back inland, he jumped into the sea and swam away. Isis followed for once in her miserable, ill-begotten life, but she couldn't catch up, for his stride remained steady and strong. He didn't look back, not once. After that day, after the one that got away left her on the beach alone, she never again returned to the island of lost souls, as far as I know of. When he was done telling me his story, we knew this would be the perfect place to hide her most prized possession. I gave Steve the conchorn with the promise he would guard it with his life and find a suitable place to hide it deep within the island's core. He said he couldn't venture inland or his fate would be sealed forever as a man with no name. Wait, where was I? Oh, yeah. He did, however, promise to give it to one of the men on the island, in hopes, even with the lack of memories, they would leave it somewhere they could not remember. I knew that would just have to do, and so we left the conchorn with Steve and swam away, never to return ourselves, so Isis would never know the fate of her most prized possession. With the conchorn well hidden, knowing no more lives could fall prey to her charms without it, we made a vow to put her at the end of our 3-pronged sticks. Though it seemed impossible to find her without something in our possession that I can't do the voice. With something in our possession that she desperately seeks, that is, until we ran into you. Allison looked at the men who once walked on land and asked a question that she just had to ask. Why didn't you just destroy her precious conchorn? Wouldn't that have solved all of your problems? Don't you think we I can't do the voice. Don't you think we've already tried that? The conchorn cannot be destroyed by mortal means. The pressures of the ocean, the fires of a volcano, the heaviest of rocks to drop and fall upon it. Nothing worked. We've tried everything. The only way to stop this madness of hers is to put her at the end of our three-pronged sticks, or find the one who got away. Then learn how to ignore her charm, how he ignored her charms. But even if we did find this man, what are we supposed to do? Teach every man who wanders the earth on two legs how not to be lured away by a temptress with the voice of an angel and the promise of the ultimate prize? No, I suppose not, Allison said, eyes somber and woeful. No, but it would be nice. Until then, we shall use what we have and what we know works best. When we find her, we will leave her bloody and bruised at the end of our three-pronged sticks. At least with you by our side, we now finally stand a chance to lure her into a trap set by us. You give us hope, Allison White, for once in our ill-begotten lives. Oh boy, there's still plenty of the chapter. Oh, all right. Allison took a healthy swig of her tea as she sailed on with the mermen and the sun quickly vanishing into the ocean depths of the ocean. With a blanket of stars and the knowledge the mermen possessed of the whereabouts of the island of lost souls, they made a steady stride towards its position. It appeared her journey would easily be won, and soon she would be reunited with the love of her life, Stephen Blackman. The winds began to pick up and blow fiercely across the face of the ocean, and oh boy did they blow cold in its tuffle, causing a mountainous storm of unsettled waves. Though the mermen were mighty swimmers under the sea, they were no match for the waves that loomed above Allison's boat. The men could no longer hold on and steer her in the right direction. They were ripped away as a crashing wave took them out and sent them struggling to find comfort from its violent, thirsting waves. Allison was all alone, except there was one that did not stray, the one with no name. He held on as the worst of it yet broke free from the ocean, making her and her pet's presence well known. She looked on at an ever-changing sea that bounced her to and fro. The storm was not the greatest one known, however, but one brought on by Isis and her contempt for something Allison possessed that she did not, a friend, and she possessed many in the waters Isis held dear to her blackened heart. Hold on a second. Gotta drink my coffee. Well, one person liked the video. Well, I've had a few people. I hope you guys have been enjoying it, the ones that have tuned in. Last week we had quite a few viewers. Anyways, we're almost done with this chapter. Isis went under in search of lonely, ill-begotten sailors for a snack. Izuzu went under, while Isis made her approach. Allison held steady, picked up an oar, and paddled with all her might to meet up with Isis head-on. The one with no name trembled in fear, brought on by memories of the past, but as he watched the last of Zuzu's tail go under, he accepted his fate. Allison and the man with no name continued to push on, determined and willed to confront her on the matters of stirring up trouble where the seas were once calm. Just as they had her dead in their sights, she vanished under the waves, only to reappear behind them. This was a confrontation she couldn't handle alone, and one her friend who stuck by her certainly was not ready for at this point in his life. Isis taunted the lonely merman with a memory he would just as soon forget. His heart was no match for her cursed tongue. She shined little pity upon his tears, demanding he give up the location of the Concorn, followed by a promise she could not keep to any man. The winds howled something fierce as the storm raged like a wild, furry-eyed beast beating its chest. The man with no name could not be persuaded. Isis then made another promise, that if her Concorn was not returned, she would see to it Allison became a forgotten tale at the bottom of the sea, told by the mermen she had deceived. The man with no name was not about to give in to her demands, so with all the strength in his heart, he pushed Allison's boat out of the way. Allison got away all right and was taken quickly by the waves, but the fate of the one with no name would have to be a tale told another day. She was let out of the violence of this brutal storm, but not before her friend Carl broke free from the waves for a moment to confidently say, "Find the one that got away, Allison White. He will help you find the love of your life." Carl was then taken back in, under the sea, by the tail end of Zuzu's ability to bring things that floated above the waters to the crushing depths of the bottom. He gulped his last breath of air as Allison was swept out of the swells. Isis flapped her tail against the sea. The wave pushed out in a thwarting attempt and crashed against poor Allison's head, knocking her unconscious. The next day she woke up in a daze. Her thoughts were scattered with horrific dreams. Three-pronged sticks and fins were floating all around her boat, swirling in a bloody, fishy mess. She couldn't help but think about how their tormented lives had come to such a gruesome end. The storm had passed. The sun was finally freed from the distant waves, but she no longer had her friends to help guide the way. She was left all alone to face the journey ahead, except for the fading laughter of Isis as she swam away. The end. Well, that's the end of that chapter. And the next chapter tomorrow I'll be reading is called The Old Man and the Sea. And that's a Stefan chapter, so there we go. And I'm reading from that book, The Greatest Storm, a romantic comedy about two lovers separated by an ocean. I read it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it switches back and forth between Allison White and Stefan Blackman, so chapter for chapter. And he's stuck on an island. He walked through a field of forgetfulness, couldn't remember his own name. He just knows he's in love, but he can't remember her name either. And he meets up with these men, and they all go searching for the love of their lives, but they just can't seem to find her on an island that holds no women. And Allison, in the meantime, is searching for the island, trying to save him. But of course, these mermen were trying to help her paddle along and find the island, but Isis in that chapter just took them all out. So she's the evil mermaid that took what all these men held dear to their hearts, took away their legs and gave them fins, so now they're mermen. And so they want to hunt her down and put her at the end of their three-pronged sticks. So I hope you'll tune in tomorrow for this romantic comedy. Sorry I was late this morning. That's just the way it goes sometime. And the first novel, you can check that one out too, because that whole book is actually on YouTube under the playlist section, and I read the whole book on there. So I hope you guys will check it out. Maybe, who knows, maybe you give it a review, huh? You know, maybe you go check it out on Kindle. It's got all the art in there. That's the first book about a boy stuck in a painting. He's been trapped in a painting for over 500 years. So, part of the series, the books are 9 and 10 Penance. So hopefully you'll check that out. But that's the one That's the one I'm reading from this weekend. This is the book I'm reading this weekend. But yeah, tomorrow I did all the cover art for it. So I did it's got a back too. Well, you can't really see it. I guess you can't really see it. But I'll be back tomorrow to continue reading this romantic comedy. 10 o'clock, 10:30, actually probably 10:30 is usually when I start. So hopefully you guys will tune back in. But I better go. Thanks for those of you who stuck around and listened today. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys tomorrow.